Hi there, it's Nicole, and today I have a rainbow halftone hearts and background card to share with you. This was inspired by all things rainbow and is just a great way to tell other paper crafters, card makers, how much you appreciate them, which I think is a really awesome idea. So I am going to ink up these halftone hearts from Altenew with two colors of Distress Oxide ink. And I chose the Oxide inks because they're an ink that has pigment ink in them, and it works really great for this kind of technique. It's the kind of rock and roll technique where you ink up with the lighter color, roll on the darker color, and then stamp it for two-tone images, in this case two-tone halftone hearts, which I think is a really awesome fun look. This could be done with any pigment ink. I just chose the Oxide inks because I had them handy, and they worked really great for this. I like to kind of add my lighter color, then roll on the darker color. Now, I accidentally kind of got my paper wasn't exactly in the corner for that second heart, so I had to start over, and I just flipped my paper over and stamped them again. It only took a couple minutes. The other great thing about this is if you use the MISTI, you can stamp these images one on top of another. So if you don't maybe get the whole thing covered, or you need to add more of the darker color or the lighter color or whatever, you can do that really easily. Instead of going in the traditional order, I stamped my largest heart first. This is where I'm going to put the majority of the greeting. So I stamped that prominently first, and I chose my colors for that. And from there, I used rainbow order. So it's pink, red, orange, yellow, greens, blues, starting over at the front of the, or the beginning of the strip, I guess I want to say, and then purples. Here is my sentiment from the Crafty Friends stamp set from Altenew that I stamped with VersaFine black ink right on top of that pink heart. It reads, "You add creativity to my life." I'm going to go ahead now and trim down this panel to 2 3/4 inches by 5.5. I'm going to set that aside and work on my background. I felt like my background was a little plain. I'm matting the strip on black cardstock, and I was going to put it right on the white card base, and I felt like the card base just needed something. So I'm taking the "Thank you for your inspiration" greeting, and I am repeatedly stamping this at a diagonal across this background panel. I find stamping at a diagonal is more forgiving than stamping straight across. So if you're not exactly lined up, you really can't tell that much. Plus, my strip is going to take up most of the room, so I don't really have to worry about being too perfect here. And again, following rainbow order, and I'm using all of the colors that I used for my hearts. With 5 colors that I used for the hearts, there's 10 Distress Oxide ink colors here. I've got picked raspberry, candied apple, spiced marmalade, fossilized amber, twisted citron, lucky clover, peacock feathers, salty ocean, seedless preserves, and wilted violet. Very, very bright, kind of a Skittles color type of card. And I did several lines of the same color, or a couple lines, I guess I should say, 2 to 3 lines of the same color before switching to the next. And I didn't clean my stamp in between each. I would just stamp it off on a piece of scrap paper to kind of clean off some of that excess ink. It kind of helps with the transitioning from one color to the next. There is my bright and colorful background. And I'm trimming down that panel. I started to earlier, and then I went ahead and skipped over to working on the background. and I cropped it pretty close, trimming just a tiny bit of the hearts on the top and the bottom. Kind of helps ground it a little bit so they're not floating quite so much. And then from the black cardstock, I am going to trim a 3 by 5.5 inch panel. And then I'm going to take the rest of that black scrap of paper, use my powder tool on it, and stamp the "Thank you for being my inspiration" that I used for the background on that with some Versamark ink. Add some white embossing powder and heat set it. And then trim this into a thin strip that I can adhere underneath the other greeting. I really wanted it to pop, and I thought it stood out more on a separate piece of paper. Plus, I absolutely love the look of white embossing on black cardstock. Because this is such a thin strip of cardstock, I'm going to put a little bit of 1/8 inch score tape on the back and adhere it underneath. I am using the Tonic Studios Tim Holtz Guillotine Trimmer. I've been using it for a few weeks now, and I'm really liking it. Just snip off the excess here after I've trimmed it down. I'm going to leave just eyeball it and leave about the same bit of cardstock along the top and the bottom. This 1/8 inch score tape has really been a lifesaver for anything thin. I've used it a lot lately. And this strip looks pretty good, but I think that it could be dressed up even more. So what I'm going to do is take Tonic Studios Translucent Nouveau Crystal Drops, and I'm going to apply those all along this border. Some on top of the hearts, some around the hearts, and in every color of the rainbow. In fact, I think 6 colors of Nouveau crystal drops here, just scattered throughout, make a huge difference. So I'll show you applying some of them. If they form a little bit of a point, tap the back of your cardstock, plus a lot of them will really smooth out as they dry. You could also use some enamel dots or something like that. I wanted to follow the same colors that I stamped for the hearts. That's why I chose similar colors to go throughout. And the translucent makes them not quite so bold. You can see through them a little bit, and they add just a fun, nice little touch all along this rainbow border. I like to start on my craft mat and make sure that any air bubbles that might be in the bottle don't spray the product all over my paper, which I've done before. So I typically will always spray, or not spray, make a little drop on my craft mat before I get started so that that doesn't happen. I will attach the panel then to my text rainbow background. Adhere the whole thing to a white side fold card base. And I like to use a bone folder to make sure that my card base is creased really nicely. Go ahead and adhere some adhesive to that, pop my panel in place, and my rainbow halftone hearts and background card is all finished. Thanks for joining me today for this card showcasing Altenew stamps that have a rainbow heart border and text background. The supplies I used to create this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more cards that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.